So what does it mean when a question on the Regents is asking you about an author's purpose? To put it simply, purpose is an author's motivation or reason for writing. When we take a pen and write down words on a page, or type a document on our computer, there is always a reason for doing so. If you write down a response to a question on like a homework assignment, perhaps the motivation was that the work was assigned by your teacher. If you keep a journal of the things you do each day, perhaps your purpose was to leave behind some kind of a record for future generations. Or maybe it was to make sure that you never forget all of the special moments that you've experienced in your life. When we are asked to describe an author's purpose, we must analyze a document and then make an inference about the author's reason for writing. Remember, we can't get into the head of the author, so all we can do is infer a purpose based on the available evidence, which in this case is the primary source provided on the Regents exam. Let's take a look at an example from a previously administered Regents exam and discuss how to properly answer the question. This particular example is from the June 2019 Regents exam. Check out the link in the description below to view the complete test, as well as its corresponding answer key. I would recommend using the following method for effectively answering questions that ask you to make inferences about an author's purpose. Step 1. Try to determine who wrote the document, when it was written, and where it was written. This is important because if you can activate your prior knowledge about the author, place, or time, it may already give you hints about what the author might be trying to accomplish. Before reading the actual document, annotate the document by writing down any related information that you can recall. Step 2. Read the question being asked. In this case, the question is asking for you to explain the purpose of Deng Xiaoping's speech, which addresses reform and the open policy in China. If you read the question first, you'll be able to read the document with a goal in mind and know what to be looking for. Step 3. Read the document for a general understanding. You may already be able to infer a purpose for writing based on the information presented in the document. If not, it will be necessary to read the document again more closely. Look for word choices and language use that may indicate some sort of motivation. Step 4. Once you have inferred a purpose for writing, underline or highlight at least one piece of information from the document that would support your claim. You will need this information later. More than one purpose may be found in any given document. As long as you can support your claim with related evidence, you will get credit for your response. Let's go through this process together. If you look at the bottom of the document, you'll see that the author of this source was Deng Xiaoping, and it was a speech delivered in China in 1992. The article introduction states that Deng Xiaoping was the most powerful leader in China from December 1978 until he stepped down in 1992. In early 1992, Deng Xiaoping visited and gave some talks in some southern Chinese cities. So, before we read the document, we should brainstorm and write down anything we might recall about Deng Xiaoping and this time period in Chinese history. You might recall from your studies that Deng Xiaoping became the leader of China after the death of Mao Zedong. Deng is most remembered for promoting economic freedom in China, while at the same time continuing Mao's practice of limiting social and political freedom. For example, Deng allowed private businesses to open in China in an attempt to improve the Chinese economy after years of devastation under Mao Zedong. Socially, Deng Xiaoping is remembered for limiting the size of Chinese families by introducing the one-child policy. Finally, Deng is unfortunately associated with the military crackdown of student protest for democracy in Tiananmen Square in 1989. So now that we activated some prior knowledge on the role of Deng, let's take a look at the question being asked so that we read the document with a goal in mind. Based on this excerpt, explain the purpose of Deng Xiaoping's speech, which addresses reform and the open policy in China. So, when we read the document, we need to make an inference about why Deng may have written and delivered this speech. Pause the video here and read the document to see if you can infer a purpose. After unpausing, I will show you the parts of the document that I read that could be used to infer a purpose. Let's take a look at what jumped out at me when I read this document as possible clues about Deng's purpose for writing and delivering this speech. He mentions early on that some people are afraid of China taking a capitalist path. Then, he mentions building special economic zones as an example of a policy that may have led to this fear of capitalism. If you don't recall, these were the areas of China in which foreign businesses were allowed to open in order to earn a profit. Deng claims that China has benefited from taxes and employment opportunities in these zones. Deng then further elaborates on the concerns about foreign investment, stating that the Chinese government not only gets to tax these new businesses, but that Chinese industries are able to learn new technologies and develop managerial skills. He also makes a clear statement that China still has a socialist economy, despite these capitalist reforms. If you look closely, there is also a pattern in this speech. Deng frequently states how some people think his ideas were wrong for China, but then he states why he believes those people are wrong, and gives reasons to support his opinions. To me, this reads like a leader trying to convince his people to support his policies. So that is what I am going to claim is Deng's purpose for writing this speech. Let's answer this question together. We need to respond in complete sentences and also make sure our answers contain two parts. Clearly state your inference about the author's purpose and support your claim with evidence from the document. So, let's begin by restating part of the question. The purpose of Deng Xiaoping's speech, which addresses reform and the open policy in China, was... Now, to complete the sentence, we simply state the purpose that we inferred from the document, which was to defend his policies and convince his people that his economic policies were good for China. We're halfway there. Now, all we have to do is support our claim with evidence from the document. Let's start by starting our second sentence with, "This can be inferred when," and now simply state the author's name again and either quote the document directly or paraphrase some evidence found in the document. So my particular answer will conclude with, "This can be inferred when Deng states that his policies are, quote, good for socialism, and that China has benefited from taxes and more employment opportunities." You should be aware that it is absolutely possible to infer other purposes from this document. For example, you might have decided that Deng's purpose was to educate his people about how his economic policies would be good for China. I would recommend checking out this question on the June 2019 Regents exam and take a look at all of the possible answers that the state accepted as being correct. The link to the exam is in the description below. As a side note, when defending your claim about purpose or even point of view, it's very important that your evidence pulled from the document can be used to support your claim about the author's purpose. For example, we made a claim that Deng's purpose was to convince people that his policies were good for China. So in our evidence portion of the answer, we need to mention something about the policies benefiting China in some way. You would not get credit for your answer if your supporting evidence was something completely unrelated, even if it comes directly from the document. So that's going to do it for our discussion of purpose and how to apply your new knowledge about purpose to answering questions on the Part 2 section of the Global History and Geography Regents exam.